Going back to your 20s, do you have a worst job, worst date, worst outfit, or worst hairdo that you wouldn't mind sharing with us?
Oh boy. I have a really good worst interview story.
Oh, okay. I'm
Okay.
all ears.
Okay. So this happened. I was in between I was finishing up in Binghamton and I was hoping to get a job closer to New York City. Okay. So I got an interview with News 12 and I don't remember who it was with, but so the interview starts. And oh, and by the way, I met my husband in a college class when I was 20. So he and I are doing this whole long distance relationship thing from Binghamton. And so there was sort of high stakes for this interview for News 12 because I thought, well, how wonderful that would be for my personal life to be able to come back to the New York City area and not have to go back and forth between Binghamton and New York anymore. Okay, so setting the scene. So I sit down in this interview, and sometimes you just say things where after you think, why did I just say that? Or why did I even offer that up? I set myself up. So somehow I mentioned that I was a good speller. Why this came up, I have no idea. But anyway, I was asked to spell the words cemetery and Marshall, like U.S. Marshall. Got both of those wrong. Then,
Oh,
no, it gets worse. It gets so much worse. Then I had written on my resume that I was conversant in French, which might have been like a slight exaggeration. I took French in school. I think conversant might have been a bit aggressive to describe it. So, of course, the person interviewing me spoke French and then wanted to speak in French. And so I muddled my way through that, and that was awful. But okay, so as I said, the stakes are kind of high for this interview. I'm already doing a terrible job. And now it comes down to the end, and the person who's interviewing me says, okay, I'll make this deal with you. I'm going to ask you, oh, somehow we talked about geography. He said, are you good at geography? I said, yeah, sure, I'm really good at geography. He said, he said, I'll give you this one question. And if you get it right, you can have a job here at News 12. Okay. So I'm like, oh my gosh, what's the question? So here, Deborah, you want the question? You want to try to answer it first?
well, seeing as how I worked at News 12, I'm dying to know if I would even know the answer to this.
Well, it's a market that's really important to News 12. Wait till I tell you the question.
Cannot wait.
What is the capital of Australia?
Girl, I don't know the capital of Australia, and I never will. I mean, I
Oh,
don't know.
well, I'll never forget it now because I got the question wrong. I guessed Perth because I thought it can't be Sydney, too obvious. I guessed Perth. The answer is Canberra, a city I had never heard of, to be honest, and that I will never forget. And I did not get the job at News 12, and I walked out of the interview and cried. It was awful. Awful.
But that's actually just to go back. That sounds like a terrible person interviewing you. I mean, no, I mean, like, how horrible is that to put someone on the spot like that? Can you spell this? If you do this, you can have the job. Like, that's how you're going to get the job because you know the capital of Australia.
I know it's really quite irrelevant to the coverage area of News 12. And yes, it was not nice. It was not a great interview. And yeah, and over the years, I do tell that story more for comic relief at this point because it all worked out. But anyway, I got the job in Syracuse instead, and we went back and forth for another year, and then I came back to New York for Eyewitness News, which felt pretty good.
Bam.
So
Which, as I like to say, look at me now.
and as far as bad outfits and bad haircuts, okay, I've definitely had a bunch of those in my 20s. Remember that style where you would take that jewel tone blouse and you'd pop the collar outside the blazer?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I did that. I
Yeah.
did that more than I'd like to admit.
I did that too, many, many times. In fact, I remember when I did work at News 12, and I was freelance there for a bit, News 12 in Connecticut. I was so broke, I would buy a blazer to wear on election night, and then I'd give it back the next day at Macy's. That's how broke I was. I'm not proud of that, but that's what I would do. So if somebody out there has got my old blazer.
It probably looked great on you. I used to shop and do a lot of outlet shopping because I was pretty broke at that stage in my life too. My first year reporting in Binghamton, I couldn't afford a cell phone. That was in the year 2000. No cell phone. I lived without it for a year, and I lost my 917 number and never got it back.
Ooh, that's
Yeah,
actually more painful.
I know that was worth something. Let me tell
It
you.
really was. I remember when I lived in New York, I had a 212 number, and I was like, do we really need this landline and this cell phone? And I hung on to it for way longer than I needed to, just because I was like, you can't give up a
Yes,
212.
yes.
Oh my gosh.
And then I did one last thing about the
Yeah.
haircuts. It's related to a haircut, but I think a lot of us did it. Remember that style in like the late 90s where they were very thin eyebrows? Very, very. I
Quite.
plucked my eyebrows into oblivion, unfortunately.
I do remember that very much. Yes. And I thought I looked cute. No, there was nothing. I
But then they
remember
don't grow back after a while. Like mine gave up. They were like, fine, we won't grow back anymore.
you don't want us. Well, guess what? We don't want you. And they left.
Right. And now I want them back.
I understand. I just going back to that News 12, I have to say that was so mean of that person, but also what's meant for you will find you, because eyewitness news in New York City at that time was a huge deal. And News 12, like, I mean, not that there's anything wrong with it at all, but it would be more of a stepping stone to you go to News 12 and then you try to go to eyewitness news. So it was like, well, I'll just bypass you. See ya. I like when things work out for good people.
Yes,
It's
it did
always
work
fun.
out, and I'll never forget the capital of Australia. And I
No,
don't
you
think I've
won't.
ever had occasion to know it since then.